It was another sweltering summer day in the small town of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where the humidity hung in the air like a wet blanket, and even the ceiling fans in the Crossroads diner seemed to struggle against the oppressive heat. The lunch rush had just begun, bringing with it the familiar symphony of clinking silverware, murmured conversations, and the sizzle of the grill from behind the counter. Amara Johnson moved with practiced efficiency between the tables, balancing plates of the diner's famous buttermilk pancakes and black coffee in ceramic mugs that had seen better days. At 28, she had been working at the Crossroads for nearly 5 years, ever since she'd returned to her hometown to care for her ailing grandmother. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and Amara took pride in her work, always greeting customers with a genuine smile, remembering the regulars' orders, and handling even the most difficult patrons with grace. The bell above the door jingled, announcing new arrivals. Amara glanced up from refilling Mrs. Henderson's coffee to see a group of 3 men enter. They wore leather vests emblazoned with a motorcycle club insignia she didn't recognize, their arms covered in colorful tattoos, faces weathered from long hours on the road. Leading them was a broad-shouldered man with a thick beard and eyes that darted around the diner with obvious disdain. Amara had served enough travelers passing through to know that appearances could be deceiving. Some of the kindest customers she'd met had been covered in tattoos and leather, while some of the most polished-looking folks had treated her with shocking disrespect. She'd learned long ago not to judge. "Sit anywhere you'd like, gentlemen," she called out with a welcoming smile. "I'll be with you in just a moment." The lead biker gave her a dismissive glance before choosing a booth near the window. His companions followed, their heavy boots thumping against the worn linoleum floor. Just as Amara was finishing with Mrs. Henderson's order, the bell chimed again. This time, a solitary figure entered, pausing momentarily in the doorway as if surveying the scene. He was dressed simply, dark jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and well-worn boots. His longish dark hair was slightly damp with sweat, and several days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. A pair of sunglasses concealed his eyes, and despite the heat, he moved with a calm, almost meditative stillness. There was something vaguely familiar about him, but Amara couldn't quite place it. Perhaps he'd passed through before, or maybe he just had one of those faces. Either way, he slipped quietly into a small booth in the corner, removed his sunglasses, and placed them on the table without drawing attention to himself. Amara grabbed a menu and a glass of water, making her way to the mysterious stranger's table. "Welcome to the Crossroads," she said, placing the menu and water before him. "Can I start you with something to drink besides water?" When he looked up, warm brown eyes met hers with a kindness that caught her slightly off guard. There was a depth to his gaze, as if he was actually seeing her, not just looking through her like many customers did. "Coffee would be great," he replied, his voice soft and measured. "Thank you." That voice, it tugged at her memory once more. Amara studied him briefly, noting his understated presence, so unlike the typical travelers who passed through seeking attention or making their presence known. He seemed content in his anonymity, and she respected that. "Coming right up," she responded, turning toward the counter. As she moved away, she heard a loud voice from the biker's table. "Hey, sweetheart," the bearded leader called out, his tone making the endearment sound more like an insult. "We've been sitting here for 5 minutes. You gonna take our order or what?" Amara maintained her professional smile. "I'll be right with you, sir. Just let me grab this gentleman's coffee first." The biker's face darkened. "So he gets served before us? Is that how it works here?" "I'm just going in order of arrival," Amara explained calmly, reaching for the coffee pot. "I'll be with you in less than a minute." The biker muttered something to his companions that Amara couldn't quite hear, but their snickers told her everything she needed to know. She'd dealt with difficult customers before. This was nothing new. After delivering the coffee to the quiet stranger, who thanked her with a polite nod, she approached the biker's table with her order pad ready. "What can I get for you gentlemen today?" she asked, poised to write. The bearded man leaned back, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Well now, that depends. What do you recommend? Amara?" He lingered on her name, reading it from her name tag. "Our burgers are the best in the county," she replied professionally, "and the peach cobbler is fresh this morning." "Is that right?" he said, exchanging glances with his friends. "And what if I want something that's not on the menu?" One of his companions snickered, and Amara felt her smile becoming fixed. She'd handled this type before. "I'm afraid we only serve what's listed, sir. The kitchen's pretty strict about that." The bearded man's expression hardened. "You sure about that? Because I think you could make an exception for paying customers like us." Before Amara could respond, a quiet voice interrupted from the next booth. "The lady said they only serve what's on the menu." All heads turned toward the source, the solitary man in the corner, who hadn't even looked up from the menu he was studying. His voice, though soft, carried a weight that seemed to fill the diner. The bearded biker bristled. "Nobody asked you, buddy. Mind your own business." The stranger finally looked up, his eyes meeting the biker's with an unwavering gaze. "Just offering some clarification. Seemed like you might have misunderstood." There was something in his tone, not threatening, not confrontational, but absolutely firm, that made even the biker pause momentarily. The tension in the diner thickened as customers fell silent, their attention drawn to the developing situation. Amara stood still, order pad in hand, caught between maintaining professional courtesy and her own growing discomfort. Finally, the bearded biker broke the silence with a forced laugh. "Whatever, man." He turned back to Amara. "3 bacon cheeseburgers, fries all around, and beers." "I'm sorry, we don't serve alcohol," Amara replied. "We have sodas, tea, lemonade, coffee, or water." The biker rolled his eyes dramatically. "Fine, 3 Cokes." "Coming right up," Amara said, writing down the order and retreating to the kitchen. As she handed the ticket to cook, an older man named Ray, who had worked at the crossroads longer than anyone could remember, he raised an eyebrow at her. "Those fellas giving you trouble?" he asked, nodding toward the bikers. Amara shook her head. "Nothing I can't handle." Ray didn't look convinced. "You let me know if that changes. I don't like the looks of them." "Honestly, it's fine," she assured him, though she appreciated his concern. She returned to the dining area, continuing to serve her other tables while occasionally glancing toward the corner booth, where the quiet stranger was now reading a paperback book he'd pulled from his pocket. There was something almost soothing about his presence, a calm center in the bustling diner. The next 20 minutes passed without incident, as Amara delivered food, refilled drinks, and processed payments for departing customers. The bikers' burgers arrived, and they ate with little further interaction beyond requesting more napkins and complaining that the fries were too crispy. It wasn't until Amara brought their check that trouble resurfaced. "$42.50? The bearded man exclaimed, looking at the bill. "For 3 burgers and some fries? You've got to be kidding me." "The prices are listed on the menu, sir," Amara pointed out patiently. "Each burger is 10.95 cents, and fries are $3.50 per order." The biker leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing level. "Look, I think we deserve a discount for the poor service. How about you knock off, say 20%? Amara maintained her composure. "I'm sorry, but I don't have the authority to offer discounts. If you'd like to speak with the manager—" "I don't want to speak to any manager," he interrupted, pushing the check back toward her. "I want you to fix this." "Sir, Is there a problem with your food?" came that same measured voice from the corner booth. The mysterious stranger had closed his book and was now watching the exchange with interest. The bearded biker's face flushed with anger. "Are you for real? What part of mind your own business didn't you understand?" The stranger set his book down and turned slightly in his booth to face them fully. "Just trying to help. If there was an issue with the food, I'm sure the establishment would want to know." "The food was fine," snapped the biker. "It's the price that's highway robbery." "The prices are clearly marked on the menu," the stranger observed, "and the food here is quite good. Seems fair to me." There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the diner as other patrons began to watch the exchange more openly. Even Mrs. Henderson, who normally kept to herself, was peering over her reading glasses with undisguised interest. The bearded biker stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His 2 companions remained seated but tensed visibly, ready to back him up if needed. "You got a problem with me?" the the biker demanded, taking a step toward the stranger's booth. The man in black remained seated, his posture relaxed but alert. Not at all, just suggesting that good food and service deserve fair payment. And who appointed you the restaurant police? The biker sneered. The stranger shrugged slightly. Just a fellow customer who appreciates when people are treated with respect. His eyes moved deliberately to Amara, then back to the biker. All people. Something in his emphasis made Amara suddenly wonder if he had noticed more than she realized. The way the biker had looked at her earlier, the subtle dismissiveness in his tone that she'd grown accustomed to as one of the few black waitresses in this part of Tennessee. The bearded biker must have caught it too, because his next words carried an ugly undertone. "Oh, I get it now. You're coming to the rescue, huh? Playing white knight for the help?" Amara felt her face flush with both anger and embarrassment. She opened her mouth to respond. She'd been standing up for herself long before this stranger arrived, but was interrupted by the sound of the kitchen doors swinging open. Ray emerged, dish towel over his shoulder and a stern expression on his weathered face. At 65, he wasn't physically imposing, but his presence as the diner's longtime cook commanded a certain respect. "Everything all right out here, Amara?" he asked, though his eyes were fixed on the standing biker. Before she could answer, the bearded man made a dismissive sound. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just discussing the outrageous prices with your girl here." Ray's expression hardened at the man's tone. "Amara is a valued employee, not my girl, and our prices are fair for the quality we serve." The tension in the diner ratcheted up another notch. Amara looked from Ray to the bikers to the mysterious stranger who remained calmly seated, observing everything with those perceptive eyes. "Whatever," the bearded biker finally said, pulling out his wallet and slapping down two $20 bills. "Keep the change, not worth the hassle." He gestured to his companions, who stood to leave. As they moved toward the door, the bearded man paused beside Amara. "Thanks for the service, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Real top-notch." Amara maintained her professional demeanor, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. "Have a nice day, sir." As the bell jingled to signal their departure, the diner collectively exhaled. Conversations gradually resumed, and Ray gave Amara's shoulder a supportive squeeze before returning to the kitchen. Amara approached the mysterious stranger's table with the coffee pot. "Refill?" He nodded, sliding his cup toward her. "Yes, please, thank you." As she poured, she spoke quietly. "You didn't have to do that, thank you." His eyes met hers again with that same gentle intensity. "You handled it perfectly well on your own. I just don't like bullies." There was something in the way he said it, simple, direct, genuine, that made Amara smile. "Well, either way, your coffee's on the house." He shook his head. "Not necessary. Just doing what anyone should do." As Amara turned to serve her other tables, she couldn't help but wonder about the quiet man in the corner booth. There was something about him, a quality she couldn't quite define, a depth, a stillness that seemed rare in today's world. What she didn't realize was that the encounter with the bikers was far from over, and that the mysterious stranger would soon reveal himself to be much more than just a passing traveler with a kind heart. The lunch rush gradually subsided, leaving the Crossroads Diner in that peaceful lull that typically fell between lunch and dinner service. A few regulars lingered over coffee and pie, while the waitstaff restocked napkin dispensers and wiped down empty tables. Amara was in the middle of refilling the salt and pepper shakers when the bell above the door jingled again. Looking up, she felt her stomach drop. The three bikers had returned, and they didn't look happy. The bearded leader scanned the diner until his eyes landed on Amara. He strode toward her with purpose, his companions flanking him like ominous shadows. "We need to talk," he announced, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of the remaining customers. Amara straightened her spine, determined not to show fear. "Sir, if you have a complaint about our service, I can get the manager for you." "I don't want to talk to any manager," he replied, stepping closer to her. "I think there was a misunderstanding earlier." From the corner of her eye, Amara could see Ray emerge from the kitchen, alerted by the raised voices. The other waitress on duty, a college student named Dina, had frozen by the register, uncertainty written across her face. "What kind of misunderstanding?" Amara asked, keeping her voice level. The bearded man glanced around the diner, seemingly aware of the audience they now had. He lowered his voice slightly, though his tone remained confrontational. When we left, I realized my wallet was lighter than it should be. I think you might have overcharged us. Amara blinked in disbelief. Sir, the prices are clearly marked on the menu, and your bill was calculated correctly. Are you calling me a liar? The biker's voice rose again, his face flushing with anger. No, sir, Amara responded calmly. I'm just saying there was no error in your bill. The biker took another step closer, invading her personal space. I think you owe us some money back. Ray moved forward, dish towel still in hand. That's enough. I think you fellas should leave. The biker barely spared him a glance. Stay out of this, old man. Amara felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. The situation was escalating quickly, and while the diner wasn't empty, there weren't many people who could intervene if things turned physical. Ray was in his 60s, Dina was barely 20, and the remaining customers were mostly elderly regulars. Then, from the corner booth that Amara had almost forgotten about, came the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. The mysterious stranger stood up, and for the first time, Amara noticed just how tall he was, over 6 feet of lean muscle, moving with the fluid grace of someone who knew how to handle himself. I believe the lady already explained there was no error, he said, his voice still calm but carrying an unmistakable edge now. And I think the gentleman asked you to leave. The bearded biker turned to face him, clearly annoyed at being interrupted again. You're really starting to piss me off, buddy. The stranger took a few steps closer, his movements unhurried but deliberate. That's unfortunate. I'm just trying to help resolve what seems like a simple misunderstanding. Something in his demeanor made the biker hesitate slightly. There was a controlled energy about the stranger, a quiet confidence that suggested he was not someone to be taken lightly. The biker's 2 companions exchanged glances, clearly reassessing the situation. What had seemed like an easy intimidation had become something altogether different. Do I know you from somewhere? The bearded biker asked suddenly, narrowing his eyes at the stranger. A hint of a smile touched the corner of the stranger's mouth. I doubt it. But the biker was studying him now, a flash of recognition beginning to dawn on his face. No, I've seen you before, somewhere. The stranger said nothing, simply standing his ground between Amara and the 3 bikers. One of the biker's companions tugged at his sleeve. Dude, let's just go. It's not worth it. Shut up, the bearded man snapped, still staring at the stranger. I know this guy from somewhere. Amara found herself studying the mysterious man more carefully as well. There was something familiar about him, something she hadn't fully registered before. The way he carried himself, the timbre of his voice, those intensely perceptive eyes. And then it hit her, the realization washing over her like a wave. She knew exactly who he was, and judging by the gradual change in the bearded biker's expression, he was figuring it out too. Holy shit, the biker muttered, his aggressive posture deflating slightly. You're Keanu Reeves. A murmur rippled through the diner as the remaining customers processed this revelation. Mrs. Henderson actually gasped audibly, nearly spilling her tea. The stranger, Keanu, neither confirmed nor denied his identity, but something in his subtle shrug acknowledged the truth of it. Wait, what? One of the other bikers said, leaning forward to get a better look. John Wick? That's really him? The bearded leader seemed momentarily at a loss for words, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of this unexpected development. Amara could hardly believe it herself. Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood star, had been sitting quietly in their small-town diner, reading a paperback and drinking coffee like any ordinary traveler. And now he was standing between her and 3 intimidating bikers, his presence alone having shifted the entire dynamic of the confrontation. Look, man, the bearded biker finally said, his tone noticeably less aggressive, we're not looking for trouble. Good to hear, Keanu replied evenly. Because harassing this hard-working lady and her colleagues certainly looks like trouble to me. The biker shifted uncomfortably. We just thought there might have been a mistake with the bill. And she explained there wasn't, Keanu countered, so it seems like the matter is resolved. The tension in the air remained palpable as everyone waited to see what would happen next. The bearded biker looked from Keanu to Amara and back again, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he took a step back. Fine, whatever, let's go, guys. His companions seemed more than ready to comply, already moving toward the door. The bearded man hesitated, then added with a surprising touch of sincerity, "Love your movies, man." Keanu acknowledged this with a brief nod but remained where he was until all three bikers had exited the diner and the bell had jingled behind them. Only then did he relax his stance, turning to Amara with a concerned expression. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Amara nodded, though she could feel her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline. "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." "You handled yourself very professionally," he said, and there was genuine respect in his tone. Before Amara could respond, they were suddenly surrounded by the remaining customers and staff, all talking at once. "Oh my goodness, Mr. Reeves, we're such big fans. Can I get an autograph? My daughter loves your movies. What are you doing in Oak Ridge?" Keanu received the attention with humble grace, signing a few napkins and menus, answering questions with brief but kind responses, all while somehow maintaining a bubble of privacy around himself. It was a skill Amara imagined came from years of celebrity, being present and engaging without giving too much of himself away. After a few minutes, Ray managed to usher the excited patrons back to their seats, promising them coffee on the house if they would give Mr. Reeves some space. "I apologize for the commotion," Ray told Keanu, "and thank you for stepping in with those troublemakers." Keanu shook his head. No need to apologize, and anyone would have done the same. "Not anyone," Amara said softly. "Most people would have minded their own business." She hesitated, then added, "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "You were treating me like a regular person. That's rare and valuable when you're usually seen as a character from a movie." There was such honesty in his response that Amara couldn't help but smile back. "Well, would you like to return to being a regular person and finish your coffee? It's probably cold by now." "I'd like that," Keanu replied, "but only if you join me for a few minutes. I imagine you could use a break after all that." Ray nodded encouragingly at Amara. "Go ahead. Dina and I can handle things for a bit." Aware of the curious glances from the other customers, Amara followed Keanu back to his corner booth. As she slid into the seat across from him, she felt a surreal sense of disbelief. Here she was, having coffee with Keanu Reeves in the same diner where she'd worked for 5 uneventful years. "I still can't believe you're really here in Oak Ridge," she said, pouring fresh coffee for both of them. "We're not exactly on the Hollywood circuit." Keanu chuckled softly. "I'm scouting locations for a project. This area has exactly the kind of rural Americana we're looking for. I like to explore on my own before the full production team arrives, get a feel for the place, meet the locals." "Well, I'm sorry your introduction to our town included those bikers. They're not from around here either." "Every place has its share of difficult people," Keanu replied philosophically, "and its share of good ones, too." His eyes met hers with that same perceptive warmth she'd noticed earlier. "Like you." Amara felt herself blush slightly at the unexpected compliment. "I was just doing my job." "With exceptional patience and dignity," he added. "Not everyone maintains their composure so well under pressure." There was something about the way he spoke, direct, thoughtful, without pretense, that put Amara at ease despite the unlikeliness of their situation. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. Keanu nodded, cradling his coffee cup between his hands. "Even before they realized who you were, you stood up to them. Most people, especially visitors passing through, wouldn't get involved like that. Why did you?" He considered her question carefully before answering. "I've learned that sometimes being present in a moment of injustice and not acting, it stays with you, haunts you." His eyes took on a distant quality, as if remembering something. "It's not about being a hero. It's about refusing to be part of the problem through inaction." The simplicity and depth of his answer struck Amara. Here was one of the biggest movie stars in the world, sitting in her small-town diner, speaking about moral courage as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Well, thank you," she said sincerely. "It meant a lot." Their conversation continued as they drank their coffee, touching on lighter topics: his impressions of the town, her experiences growing up in the area, movies they both enjoyed. Keanu was an attentive listener, asking thoughtful questions and seeming genuinely interested in her answers. It was only when Dina approached the table, apologetically informing Amara that the dinner prep needed to begin, that she realized nearly 30 minutes had passed. "I should get back to work," Amara said, reluctantly sliding out of the booth. Keanu nodded understanding. "Of course, thank you for the company and the excellent coffee." As Amara returned to her duties, she found herself glancing occasionally toward the corner booth where Keanu had returned to his paperback. There was something comforting about his presence, a quiet steadiness that made the entire diner feel somehow safer. What neither of them knew was that the confrontation with the bikers was far from over. The leader and his companions had merely retreated temporarily, and what would unfold when they returned would test both Amara's resilience and Keanu's principles in ways neither could anticipate. The dinner rush at the Crossroads Diner was in full swing, the tables filled with a mix of regulars and travelers passing through on Route 27. News of Keanu Reeves' presence had spread quickly through the small town, bringing in curious locals hoping to catch a glimpse of the Hollywood star. To everyone's surprise, Keanu had remained in his corner booth for most of the afternoon, occasionally ordering more coffee or a slice of pie, reading his book, and politely acknowledging those brave enough to approach him while somehow maintaining a bubble of privacy. Amara moved efficiently between tables, her earlier encounter with the bikers pushed to the back of her mind as she focused on serving the unusually large dinner crowd. She had just delivered a family-style order of fried chicken to a table of 4 when the bell above the door jingled once more. Her heart sank as she recognized the bearded biker and his 2 companions returning for the 3rd time that day. Only now there were more of them, at least 10 men and 2 women, all wearing the same leather vests with the motorcycle club insignia. The diner fell quiet as the group entered, their heavy boots thudding against the floor. Amara exchanged a glance with Ray, who had stepped out from the kitchen at the sudden change in atmosphere. His face was grim as he surveyed the new arrivals. The bearded leader scanned the diner until his eyes found Keanu, still sitting in the corner booth. A tense smile spread across his face as he approached, his entourage following closely behind. Well, you're still here," he said, stopping directly in front of Keanu's table. "The famous Keanu Reeves." Keanu closed his book slowly, his expression calm but alert. "I am." The biker gestured expansively. "Brought some friends. They didn't believe me when I told them who was having coffee in our little town." Amara could see the calculated intimidation in the move, surrounding himself with numbers to regain the upper hand he'd lost earlier. The other diners watched with nervous curiosity, some subtly reaching for their phones, perhaps sensing that something newsworthy was about to happen. Keanu's gaze moved over the assembled group before returning to the bearded leader. "It's a nice town. Good people." There was a subtle emphasis on the last 2 words that wasn't lost on anyone listening. "Most of them, yeah," the biker agreed, his tone deceptively casual. "But some folks around here don't know how to treat paying customers with proper respect." His eyes slid meaningfully toward Amara, who stood frozen by the register, order pad clutched tightly in her hand. Keanu followed his gaze, then looked back at the biker. "I was here earlier. I saw nothing but professional service from everyone on staff." The bearded man's smile tightened. "Maybe you weren't paying close enough attention, but that's not why we're here." He turned, gesturing toward his companions. "These guys all want to meet you. Big fans. How about some autographs, photos?" Though phrased as a request, there was an unmistakable demand in his tone. The dynamic had shifted from the earlier confrontation. Now it wasn't about the bill or Amara's service, but about using Keanu's celebrity status as a form of social currency, or, worse, public humiliation. Keanu seemed to understand this perfectly. He set his book aside and stood up slowly, bringing himself eye level with the bearded biker. Though he made no aggressive moves, his mere presence carried a quiet intensity that made several of the bikers shift uncomfortably. "I'd be happy to sign something for your friends," Keanu said evenly. "But first, I think there's an unresolved matter from earlier." The bearded man's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "An apology," Keanu replied simply. to Amara and the staff for the disrespect shown today. A tense silence followed this statement. The bearded biker's face flushed with angry color, clearly not having expected to be challenged in front of his friends. An apology? He repeated incredulously. For what? For trying to intimidate a waitress doing her job. For demanding money you weren't owed. For creating a hostile environment in a place where people come to enjoy a peaceful meal. Each point landed like a quiet but firm accusation, made all the more powerful by Keanu's calm delivery. There was no self-righteousness in his tone, just a matter-of-fact recounting of the biker's behavior. The bearded man glanced around at his companions, some of whom were looking at him with newfound uncertainty. His status within the group was clearly at stake now, and Amara could see him struggling with how to respond without losing face. "Look, man," he finally said, his voice hardening. "I don't know what kind of white knight complex you've got going on, but that waitress and I had a simple misunderstanding about the bill. Nothing for you to get involved in." Keanu's expression didn't change. "Is that what it was? Because from where I was sitting, it looked like deliberate intimidation." One of the female bikers in the group stepped forward, her curiosity apparently overcoming her loyalty to the leader. "Mike, what exactly happened earlier?" The bearded man, Mike, shot her an irritated glance. "Nothing, Jen, just a mix-up with the bill." "A mix-up that brought you back twice to confront the same waitress?" Keanu asked quietly. "That seems unusual." Mike's composure began to crack. "Listen, you don't know what you're talking about. You may be a big Hollywood star, but around here, you're just passing through." The atmosphere in the diner had become electric with tension. Customers watched in hushed fascination, while the staff hovered uncertainly, clearly concerned about the escalating situation but unsure how to intervene. It was at this moment that Ray stepped forward, positioning himself beside Amara in a gesture of solidarity. "I think what Mr. Reeves is trying to say is that we value respect in this establishment. All our staff deserve to be treated with dignity, and all our customers deserve to enjoy their meals in peace." Mike turned his attention to Ray, contempt evident in his expression. "And what are you going to do about it, old man?" "Throw us out." Before Ray could respond, there was movement at one of the tables. Sheriff Dave Miller, who had been quietly eating his usual meatloaf dinner in the corner, stood up and approached the group. In his civilian clothes, jeans, and a faded flannel shirt, he hadn't been immediately recognizable to the bikers, but the badge clipped to his belt was now clearly visible. "Evening, folks," he said mildly. "Sounds like there might be an issue here." Mike's aggressive stance faltered visibly. "No issue, Sheriff. Just having a conversation." "Quite a large group for a conversation," Sheriff Miller observed, his eyes moving over the assembled bikers. "And getting pretty loud for dinner hour." "We were just leaving," one of Mike's companions said quickly, clearly not eager for an encounter with law enforcement. Mike shot him a betrayed look, but found himself increasingly isolated as several other bikers began to move subtly toward the door. The sheriff turned to Keanu with a hint of a smile. "Mr. Reeves, right? My daughter's a big fan. Everything okay here?" Keanu nodded respectfully. "Just a misunderstanding being worked out." "And how about you, Amara?" Sheriff Miller asked. "These folks causing you any trouble?" Amara hesitated, aware of Mike's glare fixed on her. She could simply say everything was fine and let the situation diffuse naturally. The bikers would leave, and that would be the end of it. But something in Keanu's steady presence, in the way he had stood up for what was right without hesitation, gave her courage. "They came in earlier and were disruptive," she said clearly. "Made some inappropriate comments, disputed their bill without cause, and have now returned with a larger group.